All right, greetings everyone, and welcome back to Vassals of Kingsgrave for our discussion of season one, the only season of the Disney Plus Marvel Cinematic Universe TV show WandaVision. My name is Adam, and I will be your host for the evening, as well as David.
Hi, David HHH on the Discord, the forums, wherever the heck you want to find me.
Matt.
Hey, it's Matt number 2.
Matt number 2.
Now of like what, 4?
I think more have come.
They're multiplying.
Were there always 2 Matts in your class in school?
There were 3. We went by our last names.
All right, Amber.
Hello, this is amberrocks.
Nice to have you with us, Amber, and Jock.
Hello, it's Jock, Mundo Jock 2 on the forums, tired in your life.
Okay, so WandaVision is like I said, it's the first only season of it seems like of the show. It's a new experiment Kevin Feige and Marvel are doing, I guess, kind of. And I mean, I say this, it's basically the first television show they've done in the MCU, which I know, like Agents of S.W.O.R.D. and the Netflix shows, people are gonna kind of disagree on that, but this is the first show that is intentionally part of the MCU, and they're sharing actors and they're sharing storylines and all of that's going on. And it started off very weirdly. I mean, they did a 2-episode premiere, I think, for a reason, but a 2-episode premiere where nothing really happened for people that are like into the MCU, especially if they're not comic readers. Were probably very confused. I did see some people that were like, "This is garbage," like what's happening? They need like someone getting punched in the face or something. And that's probably what they showed up for. So I sort of get that, but it was also a fun little jaunt through TV history, and then they all kind of tied it together as to why that worked in the end. But let's start off with I don't know, how many fake Pietros would you give this show? I'm gonna say like a 5 out of 5 because it's exactly what I wanted. What about you guys?
I don't know. I'm not too interested in giving it like a serious grade, but it would be somewhere between like a 4 and a 4.75, I would say. I just really don't want to like pin it down.
Yeah, it's not like our arbitrary numbers don't really matter anyway.
Right.
it's like the applause-o-meter, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, there were.
Well, our measures are perfectly objective. The true measures of.
Yeah, and especially I remember the comments like for like during Game of Thrones is like, how did you give this episode a 3.5 but that episode a 4.25? It's like,
I wanted to.
That episode actually is a better episode than this episode. I don't know. It's just the numbers. It just gives you something to talk about. Yeah, we're not.
I wanted to.
We're not
the points don't matter.
Siskel and Ebert just did like a thumbs up or thumbs down thing. I feel like they had the right attitude. Like, you need to listen to what I'm saying in order to understand how I actually felt. So
I need to know to the second decimal point what you thought.
But yeah, overall, I pretty much enjoyed it.
For me, I'll probably give it somewhere between 3.5 and 4. Say 3 3/4. It was good. It was enjoyable. I'm glad I watched it. Like, is it anything I'm ever going to rewatch? Probably not. Was it like groundbreaking and changed my life? No, but I enjoyed it. So, and in the middle of a pandemic, having something to watch and enjoy is a good thing.
I'll give it a out of 5. 4.666.
Oh.
We really enjoyed it. It's a little bit hard for me to sort of disentangle how much I enjoyed the show, which I really enjoyed it, with how much I enjoyed the experience of the show. Like, we ended up watching, after episode 4, from 4 to the end, we watched every episode twice in a day. Like, or like the next day we would watch it again a second time. I was listening to Michal's Level 7 Access podcast. I was listening to Flash Film. We were watching Screen Crush and Emergency Awesome and all this stuff. Like the whole experience of hearing what people had to say about it and all the theories and all that stuff, which I'm not a theorizer myself, but it was just really, really fun and exciting, and it was, always something new. That said, it definitely took me, the finale dropped it down a bit for me. And after watching it a second time, I definitely enjoyed it more on the second watch, but overall, I'm still a little bit like, I loved it, but
You're like points off for the Buick.
Yeah.
Understandable. I feel like this is what you hit on is exactly what Marvel's going for. Is, I mean, they've had like the Mandalorian, and they have this, they kind of want eventually, I guess, like every Friday is going to be like Star Wars or Marvel, I guess, every week. We'll see how long people put up with that. I mean, I'm into it, but like so far the people have loved it, and they've manufactured in the age of binge watching appointment television. Basically that is usually reserved for like an HBO or, I mean, your network shows and stuff nowadays. People like, I catch it on Netflix. Very few people are talking about shows that air week to week, except a select few. And this, they made it big. They made it grandiose. It helped that like theaters were closed, and they gave the Marvel Universe a rest, which they weren't necessarily intending on, but I think it probably needed. And people were like, "Oh, I'm hungry for it. Like, what's happening? Oh my gosh, there's an Avenger in my home on this Disney Channel. Like, sure." It's just interesting, and it's a different show than like we watch a lot of great Netflix shows that we watch in a weekend and we chat up and we move on, and they're great, but the pacing of the discussion is very different because it's like, oh hey, what episode are you on? What like you feel like you can't talk with anyone unless, oh wait, hey, we both finished it, but this guy over here is in episode 3, and you're kind of like, oh, because it hasn't been that long. You can't expect everyone to watch stuff right away. But a week-to-week show is like, hey, you current? Okay, like now we can talk, and everyone kind of has that conversation.
Right. You don't have to have that work discussion of, oh shit, I overheard you say that thing. Shut up, don't. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, but you have to have a product that gets people engaged and excited that way. And as much as we hate sequels and bringing established IP to life sometimes as like not being super creative, like that is the stuff that really gets people in right now. And they did a great job of it. I think there are a lot of people that were not familiar with this story, but like have been brought in by the Avengers movie, or even people that read comics that like probably never read the story, because it's quite a long time ago. So it's all the theorizing of what's going to happen, and that's all fun. At the end of the day, you're like, they're probably not going to do this, they're probably not going to do that. People thought like, oh well, Doctor Strange has got to show up for the finale. I'm like, well, that'd be cool, but didn't expect it, didn't happen.
Oh God, so, one guy at work every week, because I always watch it before he does, would be like, did you watch it? Is Magneto in it? Especially as soon as Pietro came back. As soon as Pietro came back, they were all like, is Magneto in it? I'm like, no, we're not there yet.
I guess my expectations were not quite so meteoric. Like some things they're just not going to do, because it's hard to hide casting, which I mean I guess they were able to do that somewhat with Mandalorian, but there's certain things they're going to save. Yeah, that was an interesting reveal. So where I think this show really shined is the character work is giving Elizabeth Olsen a chance to run through a whole range of emotions, and that accent does really come and go. But like she was showcased in a great way, and Paul Bettany as well, who's been this like emotionless vision, like just I think he had a lot of fun in this role. So I think to me that whole dynamic was delightful, even though I didn't know what was going on. And we start off with like, who's doing this to you, Wanda? And we're like, what? Like I had some clues of where it might go, but I'm pleasantly surprised that they brought in the outside world. They brought in the S.W.O.R.D, all this stuff, like in a whole episode, and kind of tried to explain it to you and gave you a picture of sort of what's going on in the world. Even if they didn't fully explain the entirety of it pretty much ever. But and it had some good twists. So
And it
everyone's
feels
looking
like
for Mephisto or for some big
Right.
bad, and they bring in the old witch, who in the comic books looks like a granny. So
Right.
yeah. So what did you guys think mostly about the character arcs? Was it satisfying to you?
Yeah, I think overall the focus on Wanda and Vision, and even Agatha, they were the three main characters, and they all got the kind of appropriate screen time and arc that they deserved, and kind of I enjoyed everything that happened with that. And it was nice to see the side characters as well. You always want. I feel like no matter what show you're watching, when it gets to the end, you always just want like a little. It's like, oh, it could have been a little more of this, a little more of that.
Right.
But overall,
Yeah,
I think they did a pretty solid job.
I think that's where,
Um,
in some ways, this highlights what this TV show format, where now we've got Loki and these other people, can do better than the movies can. And I mean, that we got
Right.
some of it here, but then obviously we couldn't do everything with, we're gonna have these side characters that maybe we'll get more in other films later. But it gives you a lot more time. Like, I mean, the WandaVision thing in Avengers shows up in Infinity War, and like that just really all happened off screen. Like that wasn't necessarily hinted at in like Civil War like it is, or and they're just, and you just like, okay, I buy that, whatever. But this actually spent time like living with it and giving them the space they deserve.
Yeah,
So,
like in the Avengers movies, we didn't
hear-
really see a relationship happening. We just know that it happened. We never saw it happen.
and they were gone for like several years, I think, from the films, right? And then just popped back in. So
I did hear today, and I don't know the veracity, but that there were supposed to be there were supposed to be further arcs or whatever with I think all the side characters, but COVID sort of sidelined that because they didn't really have time.
oh,
yeah,
interesting.
I guess it felt like once the hex expanded and like Darcy and some people were in there, they just sort of disappeared.
Mhm.
So
Basically, Jimmy and Darcy kind of disappeared toward the end. And they only had a few little things, and even Monica did too. But the show did enough that it needed to with Monica, with just setting her up for Captain Marvel too.
Right.
yeah, it felt like obvious like world building to the larger MCU, but like I think we were talking about this earlier in the thread about like the Marvel movies, and I thought like Iron Man 2 to me was like not a great movie. I didn't enjoy it as much, mostly because it felt like they were really trying to force all this stuff in there to like make sure you watch this next movie, Avengers, Thor, all this stuff. But this is like it's in there, and it mostly feels pretty natural now. Like you've got an agency in, and you've got these characters. Some of them we've never met are being introduced here. Some of them we have, and it's kind of funny. Like I mean, they did bring in like kind of two comedy relief characters, I guess, from Ant-Man and Thor. But still, I mean, you got to have that, especially with how dark this kind of ends up being. Like I do like the consequences at the end that like you see that like Wanda sort of did this, but like wasn't really intending this, and these people were tortured and like miserable and were aware that it was going on, even though their minds were being damaged. Some of them couldn't even really hardly remember who they were. Like, and she leaves, and they're not like, oh, cool. They're they're afraid of her. They're yeah, she definitely gets some glances, which will probably be how they see kind of like the hatred of mutants in the MCU or whatever, if that's the angle they're going with. But it could have been a story where she snaps her fingers and no one remembers what happened during that whole time, and they didn't go that way, which I think is the right call. But I thought
consequences.
And I thought it was interesting how many twists and turns there were in this, which I wasn't really expecting. I mean, you've got the villain reveal and all that, but little things like when the White Vision showed up, I was like, oh wait, like didn't she steal his body and it's in there? Like and she morphed it into this Vision thing. Like, no, she didn't even steal the body. She just like pulled him out of thin air. And then it was like, well, what is he? And then they have that whole existential conversation during their battle, which is interesting. And we'll see White Vision again, as maybe he's like regaining his memory, but not necessarily his soul, possibly. But
Or maybe
just
the other way around.
Yeah. Or yeah. But little stuff like that, that I guess I wasn't really expecting. Like Pietro showing up, who's not Pietro, who a lot of people I think that was a disappointment in the finale. They're like, what the fuck was this? Just some random dude. And I think it was a random dude, but like the joke was for the audience, like, hey, you know about those Fox movies, and we brought the same guy in, like wink wink, which is very weird and doesn't make any sense, but it would have been more sense if he was pulled from a different dimension or something silly. But they were like, no, we just wanted you to see something and be confused, and it was a good misdirect.
It was very meta, a very meta misdirect.
Yeah.
I mean,
even if Feige is trolling, Evan Peters is always awesome.
Right.
And it's a bummer that he just turned out
Yeah.
to be boner guy, but he's still great and very entertaining. So.
I mean, I honestly prefer his Quicksilver to what is that guy's name? Johnson or something?
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Aaron Johnson, who's kind of faded out oddly.
Right.
I thought that they would bring his character back. I haven't seen him in much either, but I thought they would bring his character back, or there'd be flashbacks or something. And he just, I guess, having a speedster, just in general, sometimes makes tension hard, because they can, deal with a lot of stuff. But,
I just wanted to see Aaron Taylor Johnson back because he's hot as hell.
You wanted that skin tight Under Armour suit and that accent back.
The bad accent, yeah.
My husband mentioned at one point that like when Ultron came out, that like, oh, he's like super speed. He's sort of like Wolverine, where like he has fast metabolism. And I really took that, and for about 4 years, I just expected to see him everywhere. but then we didn't.
I think the main thing is that they had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which came out around the same time. And so you had Coulson, who was from the movies, that was revived, and you're like, well, he's going to show back up in the movies, and it never happens. And that show eventually ends up in an alternate world and all that. Spoilers or whatever. But you're like, well, they had this, the whole excuse is they had this protocol for potentially, reviving a dead Avenger to, bring back, a champion, and they used it on him. So like, oh, well, couldn't they use it on Quicksilver? He's going to show up and he's going to say, I've got Quicksilver, and it just never. They had no interest in doing that, or
it might have
decided against it. I don't know.
To be honest, it might have just been a handshake thing, because the Evan Peters character with Fox was so popular, so they might have just like said behind the scenes, like, hey, you guys can have Quicksilver, and we'll take Wanda with what we're doing. Right. Like that's always the complication.
I think that was the speculation at the time, was because they had the two Quicksilvers, and they were like, well, we'll just kill ours off real quick, so that, and that might have been a thing to say, like, yeah, you exactly right, because Wanda isn't really in those X-Men movies. I mean, she is, but she's never named, and she's like 5 years old or something, right? So
yeah.
I also feel like the main reason they killed him off in the movie was so that there could be consequences, because to have all these big, huge battles and no one ever dies is kind of silly.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, we get to have consequences.
Is kind of cheap, so. Yeah. So we got to talk about the elephant in the room. That really, I know this was a heavy subject for Amber. Wanda drives a Buick.
A maroon Buick.
So
not even like black or.
Is it weird to see Avengers just driving normal ass cars, or is it weird because it's a Buick?
Oh.
So to me, like half the cars don't have logos, and I don't really care. Like I feel
most
like
of them are Audis.
Yeah, I feel like
Audi's always been the sponsor.
Right, like almost every Iron Man movie has some like Tony Stark, or Avengers movie has like a Tony Stark edition of some car that comes out. But then you're like, well, that's something Tony Stark would drive. But also in the movie, he's got a kit in it with like there's like a suit in it, or it can fly, or it can do something, or like what's his name? Nick Fury has an SUV that like has like armor and defense systems. So I sort of expect like, oh well, if Wanda's got a car, it like at least it flies, or like it drives itself or something, and like it just looks like she just went to the lot and got a car. Which I don't care what brand it is. I mean, it can be a Buick, but like if it hovers, I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. If it was a motorcycle, we'd be like, oh yeah, of course, superheroes drive motorcycles. But with a car, we're kind of like, well, what was what happens if she's attacked?
I
She
guess,
flies out of the
It
car.
also
and
kind of
beats
shows
them up.
the lack of imagination.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lack of imagination, but I think more of a love of money, because I guarantee you that's product placement, which sucks. But like, couldn't you couldn't you make the Buick do something? Maybe they don't have the budget, but like, just show me that like she sits there and falls asleep and the car drives for her. Just show me something.
I
And
think
go,
it was
oh,
trying to be normal, like a thing.
yeah,
of,
yeah.
There you go.
I think that's what
it's
they
a
were
normal
going.
suburban car, and she was going to her normal suburban lot
Exactly.
that Vision was going to buy her, and I did kind of get that feeling, but at the same time, I immediately was like, oh, product placement. It was like the one thing that maybe did take me out of it, but I mean, it was fine. Just whatever.
What are the cars that Captain Marvel reps?
The cars.
Yeah, she's in.
Oh,
like
yes, where
Nissan
she's like,
or Kias or something, and
she's like, you want
this
to
is
make a
a
bold
fat-ass
choice,
girl
buy
car.
this. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I know the commercials, but I don't know what brand that is. I'm not in the market for a new car.
I just don't think that we've seen anybody who doesn't fly, or who can fly with their body. And granted, like, yes, groceries are a thing.
Right.
But like,
Well,
it
but
was a
Iron
very
Man
odd
like
moment.
drives a fair amount.
But he
He's got
can't
the suit,
fly
but
without like his body.
well, yeah. I mean, I guess because like we don't see Vision like in the passenger seat.
Right.
Of an ice cream truck.
I feel like
Right.
Iron Man is the type, though. Like, I think Tony Stark is the type who would want a cool car to drive around just to do it. You know what I mean?
It's
So
fun. It's
that
exciting.
totally fits. It totally fits his
Yeah.
personality.
It's arc reactor powered. Whatever. What about Vision's sweater wardrobe, man? On point.
He looks good in a sweater.
I mean, like, I do love how easily it shifted to like they're black and white, and then he's got the human face, he's got the Vision face. It just sort of like it was very like fluid, and you're like, no one is paying attention to this. And Wanda didn't even seem to know, and I think she was kind of under her own spell for a lot of this. But then like it becomes color, and everyone's like, what does that mean? And just all kinds of weird stuff. But the Vision stuff is like sometimes he hid his face, and other times he did. Same thing with the magic. She hid the magic, then she didn't, and then they were like, we're just not going to do that anymore. Like it was just very very fun the way they handled that. But I do think that there were some people that were like, watch the premiere, and they're like, what is going on, Adam? I can't do this. And I was like, just skip ahead to like the 4th episode. I mean, honestly, I enjoyed all of that, but I understand that you don't want to watch like reruns of I Love Lucy and Dick Van Dyke, and if you're just like too confused by that. But going back after the reveal, I think going back and watching those, you go, oh, especially looking at Agnes, because something was always a little weird, and then later on she becomes like Juicy Agnes, where she's like, where she's like the like hip hot neighbor to like, oh, what's going on with him? It just seemed like it was off Wanda's script, like even before the reveal, so it was very confusing. But I do find it heartbreaking, and I guess kind of sweet that like they learn English by watching old American shows, which I think is a very foreign thing. I mean, I've heard people do that. They watch American TV and learn English, but it's like a box of like VHS and DVDs of like nothing like great necessarily, like not like these aren't like iconic shows, but maybe not the stuff you would expect. It's like really old stuff that's like, do they even make that anymore type stuff. I mean, I would expect that like in the 80s or 90s, but nowadays you're like, doesn't everybody have access to like newer stuff in the
Well, I
black
mean, that was
market,
over a
or
decade ago when she watched that stuff. So
it would be like
was like
mid
15
2000s
years.
or whatever. And I
Maybe
guess
she was a kid, remember,
Sokovia
so-
is supposed to be, it's not a real
Back-
place, so
kind of backwards a little bit.
yeah, it's I don't know. I'm trying to think of some country that you could say it's equivalent to, but you really can't. They
At
have
least without being
technology, but
offensive.
they're well. I mean, maybe not, but like
I know.
they're constantly in a state of war. I could think of a couple, Eastern Bloc countries that are sort of, have constantly been having issues and would make it hard for people to prosper. So, I think that's the general idea, and I guess that means they're not going to have Blu-ray players and Wi-Fi and all that. But like Dick Van Dyke is your favorite, really? Okay.
Hey, the heart wants what it wants.
Yeah, no, I mean, oh no, go ahead, David.
What I was gonna kind of change subjects there a minute. So if you want to keep going on that, that's fine.
I mean, I was gonna transfer over to like basically talking about kind of the slower opening of the show. I mean, for me, that's just kind of what I was expecting, like
Right.
the show to start off slow, and that that there was going to be a mystery given the probability of Wanda's kind of creation of the hex, and that they were it was going to take time to reveal that. So, I mean, like it sucks you have to wait 3 weeks for that, but it was at least expected on my end.
I mean, like I said, they gave us those first 2 episodes, I think, to kind of get that out of the way and let people know, like, here's what's going on. But maybe they should have given us the next week, episode 3 and 4, instead of like 3 then 4. That might have worked a little better for some people, but because I feel like after episode 3, the second week is when people were like, like that's what I heard a lot of people being like, what the hell is with this show? And you're like, I don't, just keep watching. I think I know what's going on, but I don't know. Like, I think something's probably going to happen, and it turns out to be kind of required viewing, I think, for the MCU, or at least the latter half of the season is probably good to know exactly what happened, or else you're going to be real confused at some point.
I do kind of feel like, I don't know that the week-to-week format benefits this show as much as I did have fun with like chatting with people about it and listening to 10 million theory videos or whatever. But I kind of feel like all that did was build up expectations that was impossible to fulfill. And so, whereas like a lot of people sort of fell off at the beginning because they're like, well, I don't want to wait a week to watch, that fucking family, the Brady Bunch.
Right.
Right.
This is kind of boring. I don't need to wait for that. I kind of fell off at the end a little bit where I was like, I was waiting for something that didn't actually happen, and I think overall my enjoyment might have been, as much as I loved it, I think my enjoyment of the series as a whole would have been greater if I could have just watched it.
If you just binged.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I told some people that, like, I was like, wait until it's out and watch it all at once, if it's not really like, because that's a valid option for people too. But, I mean, come on, man, eventually they get to Malcolm in Middle. I mean, it's not all, it's not all, and like the sitcom openings were very fun, and wardrobe changes and all that. And then the kids, and I mean, I thought the Halloween episode was great, especially because
The costumes.
the costumes were fun, and then you started to see things break down, and then like you realize, like, well, she's not in one part of town, and people are just like trapped, frozen, doing nothing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh boy. Yeah, it was like the finale episode where the one lady's like wakes up and she's like, can you write my daughter into the script, please, like, and let her leave her room, I'm very worried, like she needs to eat. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is like horrifying. And I mean, obviously she found it horrifying too. She had no idea that this is what had happened.
What she'd done.
Yeah.
I do think though, like when we talk about, does streaming, weekly work better or binging? I mean, I feel like if you're Disney, your goal behind this ultimately doesn't matter so much what people think of it when it's all over. What matters is we want to get people's attention. We want to get subscribers. We want to get people not canceling their subscription. And
You want people talking.
If
Yeah.
you've got people talking every single week about it, and you've got articles in all the media about it, which surely they did, then I mean that alone is a success, even if in the end they hated it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
No,
I
you're
guess
absolutely
you
right.
could make the Game of Thrones argument to the opposite, but I mean, ultimately they did it brought people in, it got subscribers, it got people to want to watch, and it got people to be glad they had Disney Plus, which is kind of the point.
Because if you're asking people, at work or whatever, and saying what is happening, and they're seeing articles, and
Right.
and then there are people that I'm sure are like, oh, I guess I gotta try this Disney Plus thing for sure.
Right.
Like with Mandalorian, it was the same thing. So whatever your kind of like Disney poison is, they'll get you eventually.
Mhm.
But I think you're right. I don't really criticize the ending as much as some people. I know a lot of people felt disappointed, but I guess it's just expectations, and I don't know what everyone's expectations are different. So I'm just expecting like this is going to transition into something for Doctor Strange or for the next movie, and we got to spend a lot of time with two characters that didn't get a lot of screen time,
Right.
two actors that we didn't really see a ton of. They were mostly utility in the movies, especially Wanda was pretty much all about destroying shit, and then she was gone through Endgame, showed up at the final battle. Vision was sidelined for most of it.
Vision was basically just there for his stone.
Yeah, we don't really explore his character much in Age of Ultron or in Civil War. We get a little bit in Civil War. That's probably the most we get out of him, but he has that fight with Wanda, and then he shows up at the airport fighting, and cripples Rhodes. So what an asshole. Anyway, White Vision has a lot to answer for. Okay, just to say. But yeah, I mean, that was I think White Vision was like the 80s, most of the 80s, I think. And they made like the West Coast Avengers, and you had him and Scarlet Witch, and War Machine was out there, and
that's
like
when the kids
Hawkeye, and yeah, they were like, we need superheroes that aren't based in New York. Like we need someone in on the West Coast, for those readers, because like most superheroes are either New York or some sort of version of New York, or I think Gotham is mostly kind of like Chicago, right? So
I think Gotham
a lot of
and
East Coast.
Metropolis are supposed to be New York, both of them.
Well, I mean, like Gotham is more based on Chicago, but then when they show them on maps, sometimes they have Gotham like in the middle of the country where Chicago would be, and sometimes they have it right next to Metropolis, like New York as like a sister city almost.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't decide where they want it, but it is kind of
Originally
weird.
originally in the comics, it was New York.
You're like, wait, Superman is like a minute away, and he lets that city go to shit. He just lets Batman deal with it. Like, what the hell?
Well, I mean, in the comics, the whole reason they made Gotham and Metropolis was because you wanted to be able to have the mayor come in and not be sued, for having to be corrupt.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Marvel went the other way where they wanted their heroes in, they wanted them in New York or LA or,
yep.
they wanted them in a real life, location. And,
unless you want a second or third world country and then you fake it.
They didn't always, but yeah. Yeah. Fake countries let you do shit, but then you still get in trouble. Anyway, what else?
I just want to shout out Next Doria. But Coming to America too.
Yeah. You watched it too? Because Wesley Snipes kills that shit. Just saying. If you haven't seen Coming to America 2 and you love Coming to America, it is amazing. There are very few sequels, especially 30 years later, that give you that same feeling and more or less live up to the original. I was expecting like, oh, this is gonna be trash, like what they've done with a lot of these, like the Bill and Ted sequel and stuff, where you're kind of like, okay, like this is just doesn't feel the same, But I was very surprised. Eddie Murphy and freaking Wesley Snipes kills it. So it's very surprising. Anyway, spoilers for Coming to America too.
Sorry.
That's all we'll say.
The spoilers
So,
say it's fucking awesome.
At the end of the day, Vision, or as he calls himself, Conditional Vision. What do you think? Do you think it was completely a manifestation of Wanda's psyche? Because unlike everyone else, like, he keeps moving when he's not around her, when she's not sort of focused on him. Do you think she pulled his spirit, his soul, his essence, back into this area? Like what do you think he was?
I'm pretty sure there's like a line towards the end where she pretty much says like he's kind of a combination of like
Right.
her memories and like a piece
Yeah.
of the Mind Stone that's kind of like embedded
The Mind Stone
in,
that made her, or unlocked her powers or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I don't know, because it's because he doesn't have his own memories, but he has his own will. It's very weird.
Right, yeah. I mean, he has a similar personality, just kind of like without the memories.
What leads to the parallel question of what about the kids? Where did they come from? Are they completely from her mind or her powers?
Yeah, I think she
Seems
she
in the
called
comics.
them,
Yeah.
In
called
comics
them
they
out of
were.
thin air. So
Right, yeah. It's just that with kind of the post credit scene, they could still go the Mephisto route with that.
that's what I'm
Seems
wondering is,
pretty easy to retcon, right?
Yeah.
People have said with the post credit scene, they're like, well, it's just showing, because there's that scene in Doctor Strange where he's like reading books and with his astral, he's like multitasking,
Right.
and they're like, that's all it is, just showing she's super powerful, she's learning the dark arts while having a mug of coffee in the mountains, which I'm assuming that's supposed to be WandaVision Mountain. I'm hoping, who knows, but I mean, then like you hear the whisper of the kids, and they're like, well, that just means she's just remembering the kids, and I'm like, I don't think
Right.
so. Like, I think
Who said that?
whatever
That's
she
dumb.
create, I mean, there are a bunch of people that are like, it means nothing, because they were like, the ending didn't happen how I wanted, so like that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But I think those kids are somewhere, if not like a Mephisto thing, because someone said like like in China you can't have the devil in anything, so like maybe they would never do Mephisto because then it wouldn't be able to play in China. I'm like, now we're thinking about
Maybe
that.
they'll do the Elder God of Chaos instead, since it's
Or you could
where
just not have
Wanda
him have
gets
horns
powered.
and stuff. I don't know.
I'm sure there's ways to get around that.
Yeah, but either way, I feel like the kids are going to show up mostly because one of the other series that they're working on is Haley Steinfeld is doing what is it called? She's Kate
What?
Bishop.
The
Who's
Hawkeye
like,
stuff.
yeah,
which-
like young Hawkeye. So you've already got potentially Ant-Man's daughter who becomes Stature, who's like a
you
giant
got
woman.
Cassie.
Yeah, and then so you've got these kids, like you're basically halfway to Young Avengers in 5-6 years, whatever, whenever they feel like doing that. So I feel like that's something they're probably
Ironheart's
working
coming
towards.
too.
Yeah, Ironheart. So I mean, you really just need like you need Patriot or some sort of young kind of Captain America figure, and you basically got a nice little setup there. So I think the kids will show up. I don't know if it'll be like the same actors at all, because even if they do that in 4 or 5 years, I don't know if those kids will be old enough.
Older.
But
Yeah, they could.
How old do they look? Like 8 or 9?
No, I mean, if they're gonna bring, like Wanda's kids in for like full, they'll just age them up some more. Like they'll just cast new actors
Recast it,
for those kids if they actually want them, as heroes or whatever. Because like I mean they recast, Cassie going into the Ant-Man thing to specifically have her around for longer, and obviously. I mean, although production on Hawkeye is, I still am not, is still like facing its own issues. Like Haley Steinfeld is clearly the correct choice for that role.
Yeah, I mean she's great in pretty much everything. I was watching season 2 of
Dickinson.
What's the Emily? The Dickinson.
Yeah.
And just I don't know. That cracks me up. I don't know. Historical comedy. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Do you think that post-credit sequence was meant to just be a cool little haha at the end, or do you think it was like many of their post-credits in the movies, like we're getting ready. This story will be continued in the next show, movie, whatever.
Yeah,
Not
I
the
think
next
it's
one, but one.
I think it's
like
the one with Wanda, the post credit scene with her. Or, yeah,
I mean, both. Like, one leads to Captain Marvel 2, and the other leads to Doctor Strange.
right.
yeah. I mean, so
Um,
because we already got it was at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home where you had the real Nick Fury who was like vacationing on like
Right.
the Skrull satellite, maybe is what that
Mhm.
looked like.
Yep.
Which is like in the comic books, the S.W.O.R.D, headquarters is actually a satellite because they're in charge of, all things alien, basically, like the alien version of Shield. So, it seems like they're about to get an upgrade,
Yeah,
or maybe some of them already have.
I assumed that stuff was leading into Secret War, but I'm wondering like the stuff with Wanda and
I don't know
the
how they would
kids.
do Secret War though, but they've also made it hard. Like you can't do Skrull invasion either, because they've made the Skrull the like a kind of underdog character instead of like the massive Skrull empire that like dominates people.
Right.
So,
I mean,
but
they just
I do wonder
Well,
what
they can
version
do
of
anything
Secret
they
War
want.
they
They'll
do
just
for
do it
us.
different. They can do anything they
Right,
want. They'll
right.
just do it different than we
Yeah,
expect,
yeah.
which they will have to anyway. So.
They can call it something and then it doesn't resemble the thing they call it. That's fine.
that's kind of what Civil War was.
Yeah. Yeah, Civil War, like they sort of had like the registration thing was kind of the issue, and they very stupidly that issue is always very stupid in comic books. It's like we need to know who everyone is and have them work for the government. And I think I don't know if any of you guys watched Young Justice, but like I think they did a good job with their third season where it's like the Justice League has to report to the UN about everything, and Lex Luthor is the like he's the head of like the UN Security Council. So like they're like we basically are never allowed to do anything anymore because like he won't send them to do anything. So they have to have like a covert group to get stuff done. Yeah.
Right, yeah, especially like when you portray like every government agency like in your universe as like really, either shitty or like really bad at their jobs.
Right. Like
Either corrupt or
Shield
bad.
was like your best. It has all your best people in it, and then it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much Hydra here.
Oh wait, half of them are Hydra, which doesn't make any sense, but still bad.
It doesn't make any sense. And what I always found weird is that was a great twist. The MCU has a way of giving us these twists that completely turn things on their head, and you don't expect it based on like the comic book lore or anything. But then they were like, well, we've got this show about the Agents of Shield. Like, what the hell is happening? It was
Right.
this whole big con. And then like in that show, several times they're like, Shield is back, but it's secret, or Shield's back, but it's public. And you're like,
Right.
then you go watch a movie and you're like, there's no Shield still.
Right.
So like it does seem weird that there isn't some something like Shield that exists to police the heroes, to police the villains. I mean, it's the kind of group that makes sense in this world. But then we see Nick Fury sort of running off on his own, and then he has resources, and it's just very confusing that they never reformed any of these agencies. And S.W.O.R.D, like, I don't know, hopefully we'll get more on them as to exactly what they do or don't do. But there's a lot in the 5 years. I think that's probably when they were formed. But there's a lot in that 5-year gap that probably while it was sort of quiet, that a bunch of weird shit happened. There's plenty of time for them to play around with the narratives.
Yeah, exactly. Because like actually one of the few things that like annoyed me in this show was basically everything about like Hayward's character, just because he was such like a stereotypical like shitty government dude.
Yep.
And
They're like, if you just listen to what I'm saying about this evidence right in front of you, it'll help us solve this problem. Absolutely not. We're doing it my way. Wait, what?
And you've had like whole movies, and multiple movies like previously in the MCU that like done this similar storyline with like clearly like the government is just bad. The government agency is bad, and you had the whole lesson of Shield, and yet he didn't seem to learn any of it with like creating S.W.O.R.D.
You're like, for once, could the guy show up and have the wrong idea and be like, I want to weaponize Vision, and then go, oh, you know what? That's a bad idea. What's your plan? Like, no. He's like, no one's gonna ever know. I'm gonna get this weapon back. And like, was that, even if he was successful? Like, how was that gonna work for him? Like,
Yeah. The one, the one good thing is just how like easily and perfunctory he was like dispatched in the finale. Like you're not
Right,
important
right.
here.
I feel like
Get outta here.
his dad had some connections that got him that job. Just
I have a question about Hayward.
yeah.
What was he actually being arrested for? Was it just trying to murder fake children?
I mean, yeah, like he straight up came out of a car and shot. Yeah. I mean, he straight up came out of the car and shot at the two children. And I was like, what are you doing? You can't just open fire on children in broad daylight.
Yeah, and Monica was right in front of him, and
Right.
he like launched a missile into the town just to see what would happen. Like I'm trying to think, what else did he do? You know.
I just
I mean,
feel
granted,
like he was such a
Amber,
dick
you're right.
that it seemed like he was kind of a scapegoat for the guy.
You're like, he would be put on administrative duty,
government.
and like they'd have a trial a year later.
He would be paid.
He'd be paid the whole time.
Yeah. You guys are absolutely right on that. But yeah, in this world, they're just gonna get rid of him.
Yeah, and the thing is he wasn't
Unless
even
he's in the
necessarily
next.
unlikable as like a person. It's just like all of his ideas were shitty and bad. You know, like he could have easily been the guy that was like, okay, I'm just here to help. Like, and like you would have been fine with that. But
yeah.
You know.
Now watch, for all we know, he'll end up being like a major character in like Secret War or something. You know? We're all dismissing him, and he'll end up having like his own movie. You know.
He turns into a villain. You know.
I hope not.
No.
So, speaking of villains, something I wanted to ask is, what did you guys think of Agatha Harkness and her motivations and how different she was from the comics and all that sort of stuff?
I mean, I have no previous knowledge of her from the comics. In fact, yeah, like I didn't know. I was not clued into that fact, even though that I didn't recognize the brooch that they showed in the first two episodes, which is pretty much the major
clue.
And
the name kind of meant nothing to you, and that sort of thing.
Right? Yeah, it was only because I decided like around episode 5 to listen to the Vanity Fair people, Joanna Robinson.
Yeah. So
that like
they're what
still
they
watching.
doing okay, still watching.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And a whole lot of people Googled it, I'm sure, after that.
Right. So a bit of a like brief, like the like super Cliff Notes version is like Agatha Harkness was a Fantastic Four character who was like the nanny, and then like she ended up being like to their son, and then ended up being a witch from like the Salem days, and that she's this like old lady wearing doilies and shit, and and like she was sort of a kindly character that had like she's had some kind of antagonistic moments for the most part. Like I think she was a teacher for Scarlet Witch at one point. So it is kind of a big twist, but it's sort of they aged her down and they made her more sinister. And I mean maybe she comes around and they're friends eventually. Who knows?
In her very first appearance, she was babysitting for Franklin, and the Frightful Four attacked and took out the Fantastic Four, and she basically takes out the Frightful Four single-handedly with her powers and saves the day. And saves the day.
I wonder what like now the first appearance of Agatha Harkness. What's that comic book shot up for?
It's probably worth a lot.
They always go up a little bit as soon as this stuff comes out, and then they go back down. But I do think it's I don't know, it's a character no one expected, which is good. But then when the reveal happened, you had all those people. Oh, so where's Reed? Like the Fantastic Four here somewhere, and you're like, well, I don't really think that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But,
she did interact with Wanda in the comics, though. I mean, I know when she was going through the whole thing with the fake kids, she helped out with that. I didn't read that, but I've read about it.
Yeah,
so
well, I mean,
she was involved with Wanda in that storyline.
She was kind of like a mentor and helping her with like her magic for like a long time at various periods. So like she was like a friend and ally for a while of the Avengers. But yeah, she had some. I do think she had some like arcs where she like turned and did weird shit. But
what do you think of her
nothing
motivations
like this
here? Like I feel like clearly her motivation here is she wants Wanda's power. She wants all that power. But like I don't know. I feel like there's no more. Like, what does she want the power for? What's she gonna do with it? It's like another one of
Well,
those
I
like
mean,
villains whose
I
only
think
villainy is I want to be more powerful so I can do stuff.
they tried to establish like power for power's sake. Like,
Right. Which
I mean, when she was, when her mom's coven or whatever was trying to like, take her down, and she was like, I'll be good. She's like, I just want to learn and teach me, and like, and then it didn't. It seemed like she was, running a con on them, right? Like then she stole
right.
all their power. Um, so it seems like she was pretty well into what she was doing, and like this is like the ultimate power for a witch. Is the way she described it is like, oh my gosh, like if I had your power I could do everything all the time. Like
And then
this
what are
is
you gonna do with
crazy.
it?
So why wouldn't you want it? I mean, she's been living all this time where, doing what? I mean, I don't know. But yeah, if you're her and you don't know about anyone else like, on this level. I mean, she name checks the Sorcerer Supreme, so like she kind of, is living in that magical world, I guess, that we, is like the underbelly of the MCU. So, she knows obviously she's not the most powerful person around. So if you're hundreds of years old and you've probably done all the sort of things that we would do in a lifetime, right? What's left? Especially if you don't have, family or friends or people around. It's like, well, I see a thing that will make me more powerful. I'll take the thing if I can. It's not like the greatest motivation, but I also
Yeah, I
think
don't know.
she clearly didn't know for sure who or what Wanda was. It like she sort of happened upon it,
Yeah, it
and
was
that's why
certainly
we see
curiosity at first.
she tests her. I think out of a sense of curiosity, what can she do? How powerful is she?
Mhm.
What are the limits? She pushes her to see, where it goes, before deciding like, all right, I'm going to reveal who I am and take your shit now that I've, basically had my fun. And she does it with a banger of an introduction song.
Right. It was a good introduction. I'll say that. And of course the song. You gotta love the song.
And
Yeah,
what's
Which
her
was
name?
trending.
Catherine Hahn. It's just like played that
yeah,
role
she's a great actress.
amazing. Yeah. Lots of
Um,
memes.
I just feel like these days comic book movies and TV shows and stuff have gone really far in trying to give the villains better motivations and backgrounds and making them more complex than just I want power, like I mean,
Yeah.
like, originally in the comics
Yeah.
that's all you had. You had your Doctor Dooms who just want to rule the world, and even Lex Luthor just wanted to rule the world. As time has gone on, they tried to update him and make him more like Lex Luthor actually thinks that he's smarter than everyone else and he would rule the world better because he's smarter, and he thinks that Superman and superheroes are a threat to our society because of all the destruction they can do, which is legitimate.
Yeah, and because one of them could just go crazy and decide to take
Right.
over anymore,
And
which
so
is,
they tried to
not
make them all
necessarily
more.
wrong.
Right, exactly. They've tried to
Yeah.
make them complex and realistic, like this is what a real person might actually do, as opposed to I want power. Although I
But
guess there's plenty of that in the real world.
it sort of depends because you've got like going back to like Spider-Man 2 with Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, like you had kind of that complicated movie superhero character. And then, we've got Loki and we've got I mean the MCU has brought in just, a bunch of really great heroes that had good motivations that were tragic. But then you've got Red Skull, you've got what was her name? Hela in Thor 3. Like, but even Ultron kind of was a little complicated. Had like the daddy issues thing going on, and he was a robot, I guess. So I don't know. I feel like it depends on whether they're wanting a villain to kind of carry the day. Like Loki kind of carried those movies, like not entirely, but like he did a lot of work in those movies that you wouldn't have expected. Versus with this, like they just wanted to spend their time on Wanda and her story, and the reveal and like the twist and everything. I think was kind of the issue here. So I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming we're gonna run into Agatha again. They've clearly set that up, and casting and
yeah, I'm
in the
glad
story
they
and all
didn't
that.
get rid of her.
Yeah, I feel like that was one thing that always bothered me about superhero movies before the MCU is that like every villain just gets killed. Especially because you hire a big name and it's a one-off, and and then they sort of stopped doing that. I mean, then you had like Heath Ledger's Joker didn't get killed, and you're like, oh, he's going to come back for a great sequel, and then he died in real
He
life.
died. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was
there's
like,
irony.
oh, I know, but then they have these villains that extend through multiple movies. Like again, like Loki's story is just like, I want to take over, I want to be the king. Okay, well, I want to destroy Earth because I'm a bitter little, I'm a bitter little, spoiled boy. And then he like sort of comes all the way around to like self-sacrifice and um like you don't get time for that, with most of these movies.
Right.
You're right, but
And that's
the
one thing the
MCU's
TV
done a
show
fair bit of that.
and you certainly expect more from a TV show. Like I want more complex villains in a TV
Yeah.
show because you've got the time. I mean,
See, with her,
admittedly,
you would have had to have the reveal earlier, I
right,
guess.
probably.
They didn't have a lot of time to work on what she was doing, in that torture basement. Is it weird? So my impression, I'd have to watch it again. I watched those last couple episodes twice, but my impression was that she just happened to live there, and like Wanda showed up, right? Like she didn't show up because
No,
Wanda was there.
I can't imagine. I
no,
feel like
I think
she
she.
had to have.
No, she flew in. Like when they
Yeah.
show her during that song, they show her flying in.
Did they? Okay.
So yeah,
Her
she
basement
just,
looked like all like ancient and creepy, and
right.
I
She
guess
set
magic.
she set that up after she got there, but she had
Yeah.
a little while to do that.
She basically had free reign, but no one realized it.
Right, exactly.
So, but I mean, they did a good fake with like her in that scene with the Halloween episode where, she runs into Vision and like it looks like she's like in the loop too, and you're like, oh my gosh. So you really didn't expect that,
Right.
But of course she killed Sparky.
Oh.
I knew it all along. I was onto her. But let's see. So we've covered the finale and the characters, and we've covered Weird Pietro and kind of going forward what it means. So the last thing I probably want to talk about is sort of like the future of these shows. They've got a bunch of them announced alongside the movies now. Falcon and Winter Soldier is in like a week. Is it?
Yeah, it's
next
Friday.
Yeah, it's coming fast.
2 weeks after the first of the last of these.
And
right,
for those who aren't listening,
I don't know what we can say now. Predictions or what we're expecting. I guess what we want to see. I thought this was like 5 or 6 episodes, and this ended up being 9 episodes. So I guess they aren't really clear on some of that stuff, and I don't look it up a ton.
I think that's 6.
So.
I think it's 6 for.
Is that one the shorter one?
Falcon. I think so.
For some reason,
Yeah.
I thought it was 8. Like I know for like most of like the announcements, they just kind of like say like 6 as a placeholder, and then we'll get like an actual number
Right.
later. So like I mean,
they did that with Mandalorian
It is
at
6.
first too.
It is
Okay.
6.
So.
IMDb says that, and I remember reading it this morning,
All right.
and thinking that like, wow, that's short.
Fair enough. I mean, they obviously they had issues with COVID too, so.
Right, and so hopefully that doesn't affect the quality too much. I like the trailer looked like, again, like this was probably a bit lower budget. I mean, obviously you have a lot of visual effects, Vision and Shield and all that, the Hex itself, but like if most of this stuff took place just in like a normal traditional house set.
Right.
Right.
It's the first few episodes.
Right. Eventually this kind of goes off.
Save
But,
your
I mean,
budget.
The trailers
Save your budget for the last episode.
Right. The trailers for Falcon and Winter Soldier is like, they're flying around, they're blowing stuff up, and you've got John Walker, looks like a football stadium is like the new Captain America. Someone's gonna explain what they did there, I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. It is interesting to me that it doesn't seem like either of them really wants the shield to like go out with the shield right now, like Sam is kind of, he still looks to be in his Falcon gear and he's not carrying the shield around. He's like, I don't know if he's just practicing or he just doesn't feel like he's worthy to wield it, and that's probably going to be the story, is him, fully embracing that. And then we have a new Captain America. I mean, they don't have another Avengers movie announced. Like, I don't think we'll get an Avengers like team up movie for a long time. But we're going to get all of these movies and shows with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, or we'll get a Fantastic Four. We'll get all that stuff before we get another Avengers.
Right. Every kind of movie and show like coming out in Phase 4 is multiple heroes in one, so it's not just like full solo movies, because like you can't like you can't really do. I mean, there was you saw how much happened with WandaVision, with people wanting like more people to come in, and even I was the same way, where I was hoping for a little more Doctor Strange tie-ins or whatever. That's always the issues with, once you do all this world building, well, now it just becomes illogical not to have other characters show up.
I mean, if one heroine has taken a town hostage, you don't think anyone would have called any of the Avengers in for help? I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I feel like that was the thing here is that, like, they were trying, this dude was obviously trying to keep it quiet, with these agencies, and because they thought they had it under control. But, like, I mean, I think that was the thing. Iron Man 3 came out and stuff was still sort of building, and it was just past Avengers had just happened, and they were like, man, Tony Stark's on the run in the middle of nowhere. Why isn't he calling Shield or somebody? And you're like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it is, he didn't know who to trust and all that. But it does seem weird that he, had to rely on some kid to help him fix his suit, But
well, isn't that the fundamental problem with the whole shared universe idea? Is, I mean, on some level, it's good because it gives you the chance to do Avengers and Justice League and whatever. But on the other hand, if Joker has taken Gotham hostage, why doesn't Superman just fly in and take him out?
Yeah, see, because Superman can be everywhere in like 5 seconds.
Right.
But in the MCU, it's a little different, and they've got politics here, and people are splintered, and people are all over the place. It's definitely an issue that comes up in the MCU, but to me, it's never as, like, I didn't, in Iron Man 3, I was like, whatever, Tony Stark is too pride and he just wanted to handle his own shit. I'm like, I can come up with a reason, but eventually you're like, yeah, friends got to show up, but you can always say, well, they were busy doing something else, or to me, that's not too hard because people live their own lives, and don't necessarily pay attention, especially because you don't have like a central group organizing them as much, do you? I mean, and not after what happened. So
I guess on some level, though, you also don't want to have every movie be, well, here's why Ant-Man didn't come. Here's why,
right.
I mean, that could get really stupid and boring.
Occasionally they explain that, but like, I feel like the audience is like, we can just assume they were having another adventure that we don't need to know about or see. But you did have, I mean, the way they've done the MCU is that, there were technically 4 Avengers movies, but Captain America 2 and 3 were Avengers movies. Thor 3, you got Hulk in there. Like, they've, I don't know. They find ways to write these stories that are supposedly about one thing, and like, it incorporates the larger world. But my main question is, what's next for Wanda? Obviously, she's rumored to appear in the Doctor Strange sequel, and that's probably going to have big implications for what's happening going forward in the MCU. But I mean, is that the kind of story where they could bring her children back and deal with all the consequences of this series? I don't really think so. I mean, maybe.
Well, it could, just because, like, I mean, like, I expect the one thing I was like hoping for, because I thought it was realistic, is just essentially like revealing the main villain of Doctor Strange 2. Just because I don't think it's just
maybe it's
be,
Agatha.
Like, I just don't think it's only going to be Baron Mordo. Like, I assume that they're bringing in someone else to be the big bad, and just like Mephisto made sense.
To give you more time, and I do feel like it's going to be one of those things where Doctor Strange had his own movie to himself, and there was really not anything else going on in that. But I do expect, like, this could be like a half Scarlet Witch movie. I mean, like, Thor 3 was basically half of a Hulk movie. I mean, they spent a lot of time on Hulk in that movie. So, but they just don't tell us anything. We still got to see Black Widow. I mean,
I know, right? Well,
right, yeah, but that's going to be
theoretically we
self-contained.
Yeah,
and it's in the past.
Yeah, that takes place in the 5-year gap, right?
Yeah, like halfway through it, essentially.
And it's just like a fun jaunt off to Russia. For some reason, we still have no idea.
Right. Well, I mean, the trailers are enough where she's essentially just trying to shut down the Red Room. That's pretty much it. And yeah, the one like lasting implication will be, to have Florence Pugh take over the mantle for future movies.
Yeah. Which we'll see how that goes over.
I mean, Florence Pugh is amazing. Like,
no. I mean, I don't. No, I don't. I'm saying I'm just saying with people, if they're going to be like, oh, this feels cheap because she's dead, or because it's been too long, or I'm curious as to how the reaction's going to be. I mean, I think it's fine to bring in new characters or to swap out roles. And
right, if you think about it, though, in 5 years, most of the Avengers will have been replaced.
Well, and I mean they should
Nearly
be.
all
I
of
mean, I also am not opposed to them just recasting people, and like Thor should just keep going because he doesn't age. Like I don't want to see them do okay. Well, now he's unworthy Thor and he's old and he, we're gonna see what they do with Love and Thunder, but you can just recast people and keep moving the shared universe forward, which is something they haven't had to do yet. But at some point, maybe they'll want to bring Tony Stark. In 20 years, do you think they're going to like not have Tony Stark around? I mean,
He
I don't know.
appears in something. Oh no, he appears in Black Widow. He's gonna appear a little bit
I
as
think
a cameo.
there was I don't know, a couple months ago, there was something saying he'd signed on for something else, but
Yeah.
like it's
There
probably
have been
like
rumors of that every month for the last,
right, but
since he
they're
died.
speculating that it's like he's going to be a hologram in Ironheart or in Armor Wars or something like that. He created a Jarvis version of himself or something, and he'll show up that way, where he doesn't have to do much, and Robert Downey Jr. can still grace us with his presence,
For sure.
But that only goes on for so long, right?
And for as long as they want
Also,
to pay
with
him
how
too. I mean,
deepfakes are developing,
What'd you say, Jock?
sorry, was that I was
also with how deepfakes are developing, you might not even need actual Robert Downey Jr. to be there.
Well, but you'd still
You'd
have
still
to
have to
pay
pay
him.
him. You'd still have to pay him.
And get a sound alike, and it's more expensive than you probably think. But again, with like DC on their side, with like Justice League movies and stuff, like if Batman's not working, just recast him.
Yeah, for
their
sure.
universe is not as expansive, and they don't have timelines quite as much like the MCU has. It's less ambitious, but I mean, I don't think. If at some point they decided like Steve Rogers wants to come back and he, it's a different version, or he found a way to, because in the comic books he gets old and then he gets his youth back and all that. Like they could just recast him with someone else that wanted to do the role and figure out a way to make the audience accept it. But they've got so much other avenues to go down. I think it'll be a while before we get to that.
Right, and like with the announcements they have, basically what they've shown is that kind of like instead that they're mostly like passing mantles off, with Florence Pugh coming in for Black Widow, we got Ironheart coming in, and then we got Falcon taking over Captain America. Like that just seems to be the way they're going right
now.
now.
The one that's most curious to me is Thor, because Natalie Portman's coming back after she said some pretty like unkind shit about Marvel, and you thought she'd never come back. They had to use like CG to get her into Endgame, and she's going to be she's going to be female Thor, but I think Chris Hemsworth is also still going to be Thor, so I don't really know what their plan going forward is there.
He's a different case just because his character didn't get good until just recently. With just like, unlike Iron Man and Captain America, who were, pretty much good from the jump and had good arcs, that were, and it was their time to like finish them. They were at the right time where they could finish them up. Thor still has plenty that he could do.
I think also DC and Marvel are in very different positions because, the modern age of DC's movies, by the time that started, we were on our third or fourth Batman and our third Superman. So like the concept of recasting them now is no big deal because
like new takes,
they're
new
not
worlds,
established,
new actors.
Right. We've had how many Supermen, but I feel like it's different in that, the first Captain America movie was the definitive Captain America. I mean, I think most people would think that he is the definitive Captain America. And I think everyone would say that we have the definitive Tony Stark. I think that's a little different. So it's a little harder. So I think with that, they're having to go with the option. Like, I think if you were to just recast Tony Stark now, people wouldn't buy it and people would be pissed. But
no,
if he passes on the armor,
the way
but
he
if
went
he passes
out,
on the armor, right?
Yeah.
If they pass on the armor, then that at least still honors him, and
Yeah,
even,
and I mean, because War Machine can take on that role for a long time. Right. Like Armor Wars is going to be a little weird without Tony, but like War Machine sort of doing that makes sense. And then like I said, Ironheart. But you definitely have room to do kind of like legacy callbacks of like, we're going to recast Iron Man to show a story that happened before Infinity War, or like they can definitely do that where like this movie takes place a different period. I mean, because like Black Widow's doing that, right? So at some point, that could be an option for them to explore those stories. One thing I always hated, like and it feels like it's like the directors do it. I hated this about the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy is like we get Batman Begins, and then basically Dark Knight is very shortly afterwards, and we sort of see the evolution of the character. It's a great movie, and then he's running from he's the villain, and then in Dark Knight Rises they're like, well, after that night Batman never showed up again and he quit. Basically it's like Christopher Nolan being like, there were no stories with this character that I haven't shown you. Like no one gets to
Right.
play with my toys but me.
Right.
And I sort of like fans hate that, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you want to be able to imagine that something else happened with these characters.
There were 20 other movies and 30 other comics in between.
Right. And when they show you that Wanda and Vision had this romance off screen, and these teams have been, trotting around the world after Civil War, doing things kind of covertly in the years that we just didn't see, you're like, oh my gosh, there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that happened in there, right?
Right.
Like they don't close it off for you, and I think that helps grow your audience. It allows the imagination to take flight, and people have headcanons and all that.
Plus, you can set video games in there, and comics, and books, and audio plays, and all
Right.
sorts of fun stuff.
You start building, George Lucas
Extended
knew you start
universe.
building your extended universe, yeah.
Yep.
And then you can always just pretend it doesn't exist when you don't like it. So
Right.
Anyway, with that, I think we've probably said just about all we're gonna say, unless you guys have anything else to add. Any final thoughts on this show?
Well, that's probably about it. I actually, I will say something I really enjoyed is this is back to the finale, is kind of when the two battles like started happening. Like I realized very quickly that if they're just gonna like just go back and forth and start punching each other or throwing magic at each other, it's gonna be very boring. And so I thought they did a nice job with the Visions kind of having their logic off, and then Wanda kind of using the runes and doing stuff with that. So I appreciated the way they went about the final battle and those two things, and making it something different, as that's something that it was fine for our first kind of main phase here of just how mostly everything just comes down to people punching each other in the end. But like as time goes on, like they're gonna have to get more creative with stuff, and obviously it already started happening with the Russos. Mainly were very good at being creative with their action. So I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to that, where I appreciated what they did with that.
Well, I mean, I was actually surprised to hear that some of you thought that the finale was disappointing. I mean, I thought it was fine. I liked it. I mean, like I said, it wasn't the greatest thing I've ever seen, but I definitely enjoyed it and thought it was great. And I didn't feel disappointed by it at all.
Well, I think Kevin was saying too is like, everybody, he was angry because like everybody thought, Galactus was going to show up or something,
Right.
and it's just people just have these crazy expectations, and
it's like I call that antisappointment. When you go in expecting something and they don't get it, and you're disappointed when it's not like their fault. Like they never.
Sometimes look, sometimes you go to the theater and you're like, I'm here for Die Hard, and like you've got a whole audience that's like, I'm here to see Die Hard, man, and then you get like an hour of like, oh man, I'm getting old, and like existential dread. And like I said, you're like, oh, this is very interesting work that Bruce Willis is doing. And then there's people that are like, oh, I'm into that or something, and everyone's like, why isn't he killing bad guys? It just depends on what you're there for, and it's not for everything's not for everyone. So like this is a product that like you said, David, like you're like, I don't think I need to watch this again. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily like come back to this over and over again. There are certainly bits I think that are fun to watch, have it on the background. But at the same time, like you don't ever even need to watch all of this if it's not really your thing. You could probably watch half of it and get the entirety of the message you need going forward for your next Captain Marvel or whatever.
If you just started on episode 4 and just went from there, you'd be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not to say that those other episodes like aren't. There's no value there, because there's, like I said, there's a great chance for Elizabeth Olsen to chew the scenery, but
hell, you could probably start with 6 or 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you need the 4th episode, and then you could probably skip an episode or 2, if you wanted to do that. But like if you just wanted to be like, tell me what's happening and what do I need to know, but they'll probably do a 20-minute recap or something that people could watch, at some point if
Right.
all this is that important.
Well, remember they
know what
started
they
this
need.
whole. They started this with the recap show. What was it? I forget the name of it. They called it. There was a recap show they did of Vision.
The Marvel Legends is like
Yeah,
the
they
little
did
shorts because they have it for
Oh,
Falcon
yeah.
and Winter Soldier now, where it's like a 10-minute thing to be like reminding you who these people are, which is like,
Right.
yeah, instead of being like, I'm gonna go watch 3 movies or 4 movies, like that's great.
That makes
Because it's
sense.
like, even when they do like on a TV show that, like I finished watching Supernatural, the final season a couple months ago.
Yep.
And like, they have the before the episode thing. And sometimes they'd be like, remember this? And I'm like, oh, that was 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember
Right.
it. But they
Yeah.
show me 2 or 3 clips and I go,
Oh yeah,
okay,
yeah.
And now I'm here with the information you need to view this episode. So it's just like little, memory, flags or whatever to kind of get you back on board. So, I mean, and who has time to rewatch all this stuff? I mean, you could, and I love I mean, there are movies I watch every year. It's just every year there's more and more and more and more stuff coming out. So either you just
there's
ignore
too
all
much
of it,
great
or
television out there to watch
yeah.
everything 12 times like I used
Yeah,
to.
it used to be, there was 5 shows on TV that people cared about, and you just recycle the stuff you loved. But
I just want to know when we're getting the next miniseries about Ralph Boner, the actor. Pietro. He's got to have his own spin-off.
Well, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for Amber, who's already had to leave. And does anybody have anything coming up? Any podcasts that are out or about to be out they'd like to promote?
Well, like I said, there's It's a Sin, which is a show that's also on HBO Plus and was originally on Channel 4, about a bunch of gay men coming together in London during the AIDS crisis. Bring tissues, a trigger warning to anyone who lived through that era, but it's amazingly well done, and we talked about it, and Jock, who's here, was on that, and that should be out any time now. And also our ongoing Witcher reread, first read, or both series, which you're on, Adam, and a bunch of others, is coming out soon. We have actually a few episodes coming up of that already to go. So
yeah, The Witcher shall continue. Lord of the Rings. We've got
Harry
Potter. We're probably gonna move.
We've got a lot of time
into
for
that,
reading
so,
during these days.
Join us for the book club. Join us in the Discord if you want to chat. It's always fun in there. So
While we're waiting for a certain other book to read, but that's another story.
Other book? A Song of Patiently Waiting.
For forever.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much other stuff to keep us busy, and it's good to chat with all you guys, especially during with the COVID and lockdowns and kind of the way the whole world's gone. And the video chats have been fun too, just kind of hanging out and playing games and all that. So yeah, it's good. So come join us on the Discord. There are links, and there'll probably be links in this post or something somewhere if you want to come hang out. But thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much, Adam.